Welcome to the Healthiest Tech Talks, where we're talking about some of the biggest challenges facing healthcare organizations today and how technology can transform the way we work so that patients receive better care. I'm your host, Natalie Tollefson, Senior Director of Customer Success at Optimum Healthcare IT. Let's dive in. All right, welcome everyone. We are back at our 7th episode of Healthiest Tech. Hard to believe we've been at this for half a year already. It's so exciting. Today, we're going to explore the world of EMR management and how healthcare organizations can get the most out of their EMR systems like Epic. Everything from user experience to better testing to stronger governance and just overall efficiency. Our Optimum team has spent actually 13 years as leaders in the Epic space. And so we are always wanting to find ways to help, to innovate and help healthcare organizations get more ROI from their EMR systems. And ServiceNow is actually maybe an unlikely pairing, but ServiceNow has shown to be quite effective at producing more ROI from Epic workflows. And we have organizations we've worked with like Memorial Healthcare System, who's here today, Methodist Le Bonheur, Prisma, Children's Dallas, and more have leveraged ServiceNow to get more value from Epic. So we're really excited to jump in and share those solutions with you today. I can't think of better people to have here to talk about this topic. We have Louie Gomez from the Optimum team, and we have Eddie Vidal here from Memorial Healthcare System. Welcome, you guys. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to give a quick intro. So Louie, let's start with you. Louie, you started your healthcare journey in the emergency department as a technician for 4 years, and then you moved on to the Epic team. I have here that you're certified in multiple modules on Epic, ASAP, Optime, ClinDoc, Order, and others. And you've been working on the platform for how long now on ServiceNow?
For about 8+ years. All of it's been in healthcare. So I've been in the healthcare industry for quite a while. Yeah.
And Louie is our chief technical architect here at Optimum. So he heads up all of our innovation efforts with our nearly 300 healthcare customers that Optimum has the privilege to work with. So really excited to have you here. One of the things that we do is we share a quick fun fact about our guests. So Louie, what's your fun fact today?
Yeah, so my fun fact, I'm going to talk about a recent backpacking trip that I just did. So it was a 3-day backpacking trip in Arizona, northern Arizona, near the Grand Canyon, Havasupai, and visited all the Havasupai falls. There's about 6 in total. So that was a really great trip and highly recommend it to anybody that's looking for a backpacking trip.
I did sneak a peek at those photos and they were incredible. So that's so great. I'm glad you got to disconnect for a few days there. And then Eddie, we're so happy to have you, Eddie. Eddie is the Director of IT Service Management Office at Memorial Healthcare System in South Florida for the past 8 years. His career has spanned 25 years in IT, focusing on service management, service delivery, transformation, and support of IT infrastructure and operations. And Eddie, it sounds like you have experience obviously in healthcare, but also in other industries like transportation, hospitality, and higher education, which is great. So thank you for being here. And what's your fun fact?
Well, thanks for letting me join. And I want to see those pictures, Louie, because I want to do that. But my fun fact, I guess it's never too late to get started in doing something. I didn't graduate college till I was 40, and I'm very active right now. And I have done 22 marathons and 3 half Ironmans, all after the age of 50.
Wow. That's incredible. Okay, well, I think we can stop the webinar at this point. Mic drop on that. I'm just kidding. Thank you, Eddie. That's really, really awesome. All right, well, let's jump in. Just to set the stage here, right? If you're a healthcare CIO or you're an EMR manager, right? You know how complex it is implementing and running the EMR platform, and how difficult it can be and how much risk there is if it's not managed properly. And so at least what we've heard from our customers is they're constantly getting requests from stakeholders all across the organization for enhancements. It's hard to justify spending more money on expanding the EMR. It's a huge investment when maybe things are not running as efficiently as they could, or you're not feeling like you're getting all the value from it that you could be. So we hear a lot of complaints from our customers, like really clunky incident management processes, right? Just frustrated clinicians that are trying to get something fixed, but it's taking them away from patient care, and that can really be frustrating and inefficient. We hear feedback about manual testing processes and how long they take, how manual it is with spreadsheets and printouts, and how that can drain resources and delay the time to get live on their new version. Or even disjointed change control processes and release management processes that don't do a good job of checking for conflicts, or maybe pose some risk. Maybe not as great audit documentation. So these are a lot of the common, topics that we will talk to our customers about. And maybe some of you here that are listening are facing the same things. So I'm excited to have Louie talk through, those challenges in more detail, but also what the solutions can be for those and how we've seen that impact at other health systems. But Eddie, let's start with you. So we're going to kind of start in the user experience realm with managing, EMR support. And this is something that we've actually had the privilege to work with Memorial Health System on, which is great. So Eddie, if you could just kind of tee this up, what are some of the challenges that your organization was facing before we implemented the EMR help solution?
One of the things you had mentioned, Natalie, is that, it's a little bit clunky, or it was very difficult to report the problems. Let me take a step back. They weren't reporting the problems. They're working with their patients, and something breaks. It's like, I don't have time for this. And they didn't. And so it would be very difficult at times to report on things. When we had regular on-site technicians go around and do their rounding, that's when they would pull them over and say, hey, by the way, XYZ is broken. And the other thing that we noticed and was really difficult is they would go ahead and submit an incident, but there was no patient data there at all. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, where with the Epic EMR help button, we've been able to bring in the data over from Epic, the patient data, the instance or the record that they're working on. And we got a lot more of that information. So those phone calls going back and forth between patient and the clinical IT support person drastically reduced. So obviously there's a lot of benefits. And not only that, we can report on it. We can talk a little bit later about the dashboards and the number of incidents and requests that we received since we've implemented.
So, Eddie, how, they weren't reporting the issues, right? So what impact was that having on healthcare operations and on patient care?
I think one of the things is if they went to go use that equipment the next time, it wasn't available. So they'd have to walk somewhere else, or they'd have to bring one of those one of those, what do they call it? Workstations on wheels. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, any of those stopgaps, and I'm calling them stopgaps, are patient impacting and affect the care of the patient. And the turnaround time may take too long, or they'd have to call somebody else in. So at the end of the day, there was a lot of room for improvement. And you can see some of those areas that were not working well.
Yeah, Louie, you've worked with at least 10 hospitals on the same use case. What's some of the feedback that you've heard as well?
Yeah, Eddie's exactly right. I think on average, it takes about 7 minutes for a clinician to pick up the phone and call the service desk and report something broken. That's just time that they don't have. So the EMR solution allows them to automatically log into ServiceNow directly from within Epic. They don't have to go hunting for a separate window. And it can even expand beyond just normal incident and request. If you have clinical engineering, or if you have facilities, if you have HR, or if you want to chat and do a virtual agent or even a live chat with your service desk, You can do that from within Epic. You never have to leave that application. It saves the clinician a lot of time.
So we're talking here about basically having IT support from the Epic team, but through ServiceNow, but the clinicians are not actually having to leave Epic in order to take advantage of that support. So for those who may not be familiar, this is a solution that's available on the platform called EMR Help. And it's something that Optimum has specialized in just because of, our focus in healthcare and with Epic customers. But Louie, can you show us like what does the experience look like? What are some of the capabilities and the benefits of EMR Help?
Yeah, I'd love to. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like. Let me share my screen here. Perfect. So if you can imagine, this is my ServiceNow screen. And if I have electronic medical record in the background, it doesn't have to necessarily be Epic, but we can be either Epic or Cerner. I have it in the background. The clinician is going to click a button at the top. It's going to automatically log them in. It passes their credentials over from one system to the next. They're immediately brought up to a screen that looks very similar to like something like this that you see on your screen. I'm going to go ahead and expand this just so we can see it in full screen. From here, we can also change what the look and feel is based on their role. So now I know who's logged in, what their role is, what their login department is. I can then tailor the screen specifically for either providers or for registered nurse or even back-end office as well. Now from here, I can click Get Help. Notice it can automatically pull the medical record number, contact serial number, user template, workstation ID, login department. There's a lot of different attributes that we can pull directly from the electronic medical record system into ServiceNow. And this provides a couple of really good benefits. One, we can do some automatic routing based on the user template or login department or even the workstation that they're logged into. We can route to the appropriate team, bypassing that service desk kind of a triage. Again, just saving time and reducing the overall, creation to resolution time.
And Eddie,
second thing,
sorry
go ahead.
to interrupt. No, I'm just thinking about what Eddie commented on earlier about, typically prior to this EMR Help solution being implemented at MHS, clinicians didn't have any of this patient data, right, to directly into the ticket. So how did they handle that, Eddie?
It was phone calls going back and forth. The worst thing about IT support is that if you don't have that customer on the phone when you can or when they're calling you, the callbacks, the leaving the voicemail, the not being available, and the turnaround time to fix that issue took too long. And what was happening is that we were missing all this EMR data. So by implementing the Epic EMR Help, and we were able to grab, I think, like 40 pieces of data that allowed the MRM number. There's some other numbers there, and I don't know all what they're called, tokens or records. But a lot of times it'll allow our clinician right now to handle that issue remotely and maybe not even have to call them back, maybe be able to fix it and then just close the incident out and say, hey, your issue's been resolved.
So huge efficiency gains there.
Absolutely. And
it's a great way to even communicate with the clinicians as well. So the clinicians are not always in their email box. So those emails, when it comes through and it says, your incident has been resolved or there's new comments, they can also do that from within EMR Help as well. They can click on the button, check the status of any recent incidents or requests they submitted.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, Natalie, is like the way that we had our incidents routing before is based on the item that's selected in our portal. What we did is we made a change and we are using the Epic templates. And depending on the individual that is logged in, because there's also templates within Epic, that we were routing our incidents and our requests, because we did go with requests also to route them to those correct groups. And obviously with anything is when you build it, you're going to have to do some continual service improvement. And we are looking at ways to improve a lot of that routing. But I will tell you that the Epic EMR data that is populating our incidents and requests have definitely decreased the amount of support time.
It's pretty wild to think about the impact there that's possible when you're literally taking a middleman step out of the process for the most part. Just how much quicker that ticket can get to somebody who can support it without that, non-value adding intervention. So I think that's a great point to make.
One other thing that we're gaining benefits from is they're not picking up the phone and calling the service desk. So overall, our service desk call volume from 12 months ago has been reduced about 40%. And we've done a number of different things to help us get that there. And one of them is the Epic EMR button. I mean, It's saving some phone calls. So this has some part to do with the overall 40%. And those things are priceless.
That's a pretty incredible statistic. Overall call volumes reduced by 40%, largely due to the EMR help implementation. So that's really incredible. Thanks for sharing that. Louie, do you want to keep going on your solution?
Yeah. One more thing that I'll add, because there's number one thing I hear when we're pulling in some of this patient data into ServiceNow is, what does the security look like? So EMR help does take an extra step to ensure the patient data is protected. And so it comes with some column level encryption on the ServiceNow database, which is encryption while in transit across the network layer. So there's some additional encryption there. And there's also some database encryption that comes with the EMR help solution as well, which is encryption while the data is at rest. When this information does populate ServiceNow, it's populated in a way that we can control who has access to see this information, who has access to report on this information. And if we wanted to do an archive or destroy rule, maybe 30 days or 60 days after the incident has been closed, we can go ahead and do that without impacting the incident itself. There's a lot of security architecture that's built into how EMR help was designed.
I will add that our IT security team and CISO were asking a lot of questions when we implemented this. So with all that information you just shared, we had to share that with them too.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I'm really glad that you shared that because, we hear this all the time with our customers, just the concerns from InfoSec and with any new solutions we're kind of introducing into the patient data environments. So that's a great addition. It's good to know that there's a way to leverage the benefit here while keeping that important data secure.
Then one more thing that I'll add that you also get with EMR help, what actually is just part of the core platform, but I think it's going to be really valuable is some of your usage reports. So being able to open a dashboard and see how many users are actively using my EMR help. What's their average duration? What are they clicking on? What are they searching for? You can use this information to then improve your EMR help portal or even your employee center portal as well. Is this something that you guys, do you use this dashboard?
It's really interesting because this brought back memories. We don't use this dashboard. What we've been using is one of the dashboards that you helped us build, but we've also expanded upon that. Since going live at the end of April, early May, we've had about 400 incidents and 400 requests submitted. And like I shared with you before offline, is just because you build it, they will come. No, we have noticed that we need to continue to promote this. We are developing and creating some videos to be able to share it with our user population. Even I had a conversation yesterday with some clinical individuals, and I asked them, hey, are you in Epic? Do you use the Epic help button? And they go, well, what's that? So if you're implementing anything, and not just Epic help, you have to communicate it. And we know that this is only going to grow. And the data is also showing us that, yes, there's been some use, but we're also noticing, and we talked about this earlier, is that did we set this up the right way by routing it based on the user template? Do we need to improve upon that? And those are the things where the continual service improvement comes in. It's just, you can't build it and forget about it. You got to go in there and dig into the data, read into it, what it can show you, and also for ways to help you improve the support process. And we're working on those things now.
Yeah. Can you tell me about some of the other options or requests that you have available on EMR Help?
Well, it's interesting because it's more than anything the exposure. It's like at the fingertips of the clinicians. We had the surgical team and the ER doctors and everybody in the OR. They were having issues with maybe anesthesia wasn't there, the OR room wasn't ready, because it's like they want to turn around those OR rooms rather quickly. And any holdup, it's like it's lost revenue. So what we did is we created an OR issues and concerns button, and we placed that on the EMR portal. So now anytime that after a surgical procedure or any OR procedures happen, they can go in there and submit any of these issues. And we set it up where it's going to a team of, I think it's an OR type leadership staff, and they're looking at that and they're making some changes based on the feedback. That's one button. The second button that we're about to implement is we're working with supply chain management, and we're creating a form in our regular portal to be able to order they do value analysis and all that supply chain stuff. But there's a lot of times where physicians come in and they want to order some parts and things like that, and they'd have to leave the Epic tool to go do that. No longer. We're going to be putting that button on the Epic EMR portal, so they're going to be able to do that within Epic.
Wow. So OR staff, supply chain, it just shows that this really provides an entry point and a facilitation, that layer of engagement and action that can span multiple functions and departments within the organization, which is really powerful. I mean, Louie, talk a little bit about the biomed side of things and how you've seen that used.
Yeah, so both biomed and facilities, and Eddie brought up a good point with the OR. There's times where I need facilities because the filters need to be changed at a certain rate, or the temperature needs to be just right before a surgeon goes in there and performs an 8-hour surgery. And it's a way for the clinicians to quickly submit a ticket to either clinical engineering or to facilities to kind of expedite the same process that we do for IT. Get those work orders submitted. And what's great about the facilities and clinical engineering is they're very mobile friendly. And so the technician receives push notifications almost instantly when something has been submitted, especially for a critical area like the operating room. And it can help reduce the amount of time that the clinician has to then call and figure out what phone number do I call for whatever type of issue. Let the system do all of that system processing and routing in the background.
The other thing I'll mention that I want to call out when you were demoing the solution, Louie, and showing the EMR portal, I love that we can also use the Employee Center portal as part of that. Some customers are using Employee Center, essentially ServiceNow's enterprise portal. It's that single entry point, that digital front door, as they like to call it, for all these different functions across the organization. And so that's one of the areas that's flexible within this solution, is being able to bring in your new and improved user experience as part of that, within Epic user experience.
Absolutely. And it connects you to all of the departments that you have in your Employee Center or Employee Center Pro. You can bring into EMR Help.
Fantastic. Well, that was such a great conversation. Thank you, Eddie, for sharing the personal experience. I bet a lot of people are going to have questions for you. And we will, take questions towards the end, but let's move on to the next challenge. We have 3 more use cases to talk about and to show everybody. And this one's related to governance with enhancements. So Louie, can you talk a little bit about the challenges that we've heard from health systems around? Yeah.
And I'll even tie it back to EMR Help a little bit. So now that users feel comfortable in submitting requests or submitting incidents, there's now this flood of enhancements requests that are coming in from multiple departments, whether you're pharmacy, radiology, inpatient, outpatient. And it may not even necessarily be EMR specific. It could be other systems, but overall it's improvements to different systems to help the clinicians. And really what we're doing is leveraging ServiceNow to manage these requests, being able to get a clear governance process, understand what the value or score what the value is going to be for all these requests, That way we can properly prioritize them. We can put some planned end dates, planned start dates, and also do some resourcing as well. So if I want to track resources or financials, what is my 2025 year going to look like? What projects are we going to work on? How do we align them to organizational goals?
Eddie, I'm curious, how does Memorial Healthcare System deal with enhancements today?
It's so interesting. You talked about the mature way. We're not there yet. I guess we're still in elementary school. We use the ITSM platform for the request rhythm task process. We have a slew of Epic optimizations requests that come in. And the way that we built it is that depending on what you want, it routes to that group. And I'm going to give you an example. The other day we were dealing with a ClinDoc team, and they're getting a bunch of stuff. And we just have one field to say, describe what your issue is. And it's been like that since our go live years ago. So now we are revamping their form to ask more specific questions. They get more information in advance. But the interesting part about it is, like you talk about governance, is like we say yes to everything. And that's not a good thing. And what happens is this team has about 470 tasks just sitting on their queue. And obviously they're going through it, but they're going through it slow. So we want to talk offline. I want to understand the governance process to maybe move that over to the SPM side. But currently we're doing that on the ITSM side, and maybe call us elementary. We need to get to college like you, Louie.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And it's like with IT teams, who may not understand all the details of these requests and what's behind them, what the business case is. How much time are they spending going through all of those, hundreds and trying to prioritize, right? I mean, that's essentially the problem that we're solving here, is getting that prioritization done from a data-driven perspective with input from the proper parties, or the proper people across the business, so that IT teams aren't having to rack their brains over, well, which one do I do first? Which one's the highest value, right?
Yeah.
That's difficult regardless of what it is, whether it's Epic Help, EMR stuff, or supply chain. We're all struggling with that. And I guess that governance model that you were talking about, Louie, at least allows you to plan more. I know we're starting to use an agile type environment to work on our tasks outside of our development work. And we're struggling with it just as well as a lot of other areas within our organization.
Yeah. So I want to expand on what you said earlier about just having like one big block of text for, what is it that you need. There's times where that block of text doesn't have all the information that you need to properly score and prioritize some of these enhancements. And it's coming directly to your IT teams, where your IT is having to spend a lot of time figuring out what is it that the user's really asking for. And is this something that the business is really looking to implement? Is this bringing enough value to the organization? So really what we're trying to shift here is, let's get the business owners or the business stakeholders for each of your different products. And we can say inpatient, radiology, Willow, or pharmacy, and get them into the forefront where they are triaging some of these requests. They are the business stakeholders. Let's let them review, let's let them score it, and then have it come to the IT team where we can do the resourcing part, and then talk about dates and roadmap.
So Louie, can you show us what this looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you see here on my screen is all of my organizational goals. So I can set up my goals here, and I can put specific targets. So whether I want to increase my scores from patients, or if I want to decrease my incident resolution times, I can put everything on here. I can assign owners, I can assign review dates. So we're monitoring on a very regular basis. So you get these items in here, and then as these enhancements are coming into your queue, let's align them to one of these organizational goals. It helps with that conversation of priority. Is this really what the organization is trying to do within this fiscal year or this quarter? And it helps with that prioritization conversation with whoever the requester is. The next piece I want to show is, once we align to our organizational goals, how do we score these items? And out of the box, ServiceNow has a couple of different methods. I'm using this RICE method here, which is your reach, impact, confidence, and effort evaluates a specific score. So have your business stakeholders involved in the evaluation and scoring of all of the demands and enhancements that are coming into your environment for all of your different applications. I know we're talking a lot about Epic, and they have a very large number of enhancements, but this type of governance really works for all of your applications that are receiving your requests. And then from here is where we can start doing some of our planning. So let's prioritize, and we can start by ranking our items all by our RICE score, whatever method that you want to use to evaluate which ones you're going to be working on, whatever calculation you want to use. And then from here, we can design our roadmap or have ServiceNow automatically design this roadmap for you. That way your business stakeholders, your users, we all are all on the same page of when is a project going to start, when is a project potentially going to end. And I can break this down here. You can see I have it broken down by primary goal. So your executives, if they want to see what did we accomplish related to, goal number 1 or goal number 2, I can set that here. I can also change my view into a different lens. Rather than doing this by goal, I can do this by, let's say, by product, by application. So if I'm speaking to the emergency department, I can say these are the ones that are going to impact your area specifically. And here's the roadmap of when we're looking to start and finish some of these items. And then the next piece I want to show you is now that we have all of our roadmap and what we would like to do, how are we going to resource? This is where the capacity planning conversation comes in. Capacity planning allows me to see which one of my teams, if I were to complete all of these projects the way I have them laid out, which one of my teams are over allocated or under allocated. I can see their percent utilization all from a simple dashboard here. This allows me to play out different scenarios where I can move projects either front or forward or backward to accommodate some of the capacity or resource restrictions that I may have. Or if I need to hire some outside help or subcontract work to be able to accomplish some of the items that we have set on our calendar, I can show you how to do that.
So Louie, what is the underlying application that is supporting these healthcare specific workflows?
Yeah, good question. So this one specifically that I'm showing is the strategic planning workspace. So this is included in your strategic, PPM type license. What I'm showing here is the SPM Pro, Strategic Portfolio Management Professional. It really gives me access to all of this information. I recommend the Pro because it does a better job of doing your capacity planning and also financial planning as well. I haven't really shown much about financials, but if you are tracking a portfolio and you only have a specific budget, you want to track your cost plans and also benefit plans so you can calculate your ROI. That Pro model is really the one that you're going to be looking for.
It's incredible just recently how much demand we're starting to see from health systems regarding strategic portfolio and project management. I think there's a big gap out there and a desire to really bring this data up a level and have it inform planning and strategic goal alignment and the things that you're sharing here. So huge impact here that an organization can experience.
Yep, absolutely. Especially when it comes to bringing in some of your stakeholders outside of IT, start bringing them into the conversation, let them have access to views like this. It can be tailored so it only shows specific projects or demands related to either a specific product or business application or even application service. The ones that they're really interested in is their personal view that they can have access to.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Louie. That's a great use case. Let's move on to the next one. We have 2 more. This third one is a familiar topic. We've talked about it before, but let's cover it one more time. Test management.
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of telling a story here. So as users submit something through EMR help, we prioritize them, we score them, we do the resource plans using strategic portfolio management. And now it comes time to building these items and testing them. And when it comes to some of your large testing efforts, let's say we're doing an Epic upgrade or even an Epic go live, or I'll take an Epic out of it. And let's say you're going to implement a new ERP system or even a ServiceNow go live, right? How do we do some of the manual integrated testing scripts? What I've seen customers really do is they'll take an Excel spreadsheet. I know that Epic provides kind of a templated Excel spreadsheets for their test management or test scripts. They provide it to the customer, and it's like this long list. It could be 300 lines long of different steps that need to be completed by various different teams. And then you document whether something passed, something failed. And then the defect tracking piece of it is where organizations really need some help. They'll document either something in, again, an Excel spreadsheet, which is a completely different spreadsheet. It's hard to track, hard to visualize where exactly are we at from our testing. Is there critical items that are broken that are going to prevent me from being able to upgrade or to go live? So something that we've done in ServiceNow, and this is an Optimum specific offering that we've built on the platform using App Engine Studio. But what you see here is a quick overview of a dashboard. It's a live view of where are we at with my testing. So I can see all my test scripts by status, my test steps by status, what's my current percent complete overall, what's my expected percent complete. So I should be at 93% by now. Looks like we're only at 9%. We have some work to do. As we scroll down, I can see all of the test scripts that are currently in progress, who owns those test scripts, meaning what are the teams that is currently assigned to, and how long that team has been holding on to that test script. And this allows your test manager, if you see a team like this Cadence team here, they've been holding on this one for 68 days, allows me the test manager kind of go tap on their shoulder and kind of figure out exactly what's going on, what's the holdup, why is it blocked? And if it is blocked, then it should be documented as such. And then I can see percent complete by test script as well. Let me scroll down to the bottom here. So I can see my teams that I'm going to need the most amount of resources for. So as I do, let's say round 1 or round 2 or round 3 of testing, I need to figure out approximately how much time am I going to need from the individual teams. I can then look at this and see all of the test steps that are going to need to be completed by team. So it looks like ASAP, Prelude, and HIM. I'm going to need the majority of those teams versus Beaker, Behavioral Health, or Willow. It's going to be a little bit on the lower end. So this helps me with some of those resource plans conversations with the resource manager, how much time I'm going to need per team. And this last piece is the defect piece. So as defects are found or things that are found that are broken within the system that you're testing, let's log those here. And actually, let me just show you what it looks like to go through a test script. We'll document a defect and kind of show you how easy it looks. So I'm going to open up one of my test scripts here. This is my ED to ED transfer test script scenario. It's not started yet. This is really what your analysts are going to be working on a regular basis as they go through some of their integrated testing. And it's really as simple as what it looks. You're going to click pass, you click pass. You can also click fail. A failure means it's going to allow you to continue. Just that particular step may have failed, but I can still continue, versus a block is going to be something that's going to stop the script in its tracks. I'm going to document the blocked reason. I'm going to do some automated notifications to your test manager. That way they can get all on the same page of why was something blocked, what remediation needs to be done. And of course, if something does fail, you can report a defect. And the great thing about this is when I report a defect is it captures the test script and the test step that the user was on when they clicked that report defect button. There we go. Wow. So what the benefit of this is, now that let's assign this to the Epic Willow team. This Epic Willow team, when they received this defect, they needed to recreate some of the steps that the user took to find this defect. They can go back through that test script and find out exactly at which step did it fail and what were the steps leading up to this failure.
I can't imagine having to do all of that in Excel. It sounds awful.
Yeah.
Louie, there's a question in the chat here. The test screen you are showing appears to be for integrated testing. Do you also have a functionality or for application or unit testing?
Yeah, so you can still use this for unit testing. So I scrolled up to the top here and I can filter by test plan. So if I have like a round one, round two, round three, but I can also filter by assignment group. So if I wanted to create some test groups that are specific to, let's say, the ASAP module, and really all of the test steps are going to be ASAP specific, I can still create that test plan, and then you can filter to just show those ASAP pieces or the ASAP team. So you can still use it for your unit testing as well if you have kind of those test scripts that you have in Excel.
And can these test scripts accommodate a greater amount of detail within the individual steps?
They can, yeah. So the what I was showing here, it's kind of a high level detail, but if I see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So if we look at test step 1, it gives me a quick step of what needs to be accomplished, the expected outcome, and then the input is currently blank. But you can add as much detail as you need to these items, and it's going to just grow naturally. So if I add a couple of lines here, the screen will just grow with you. So you can add in as much information or as much detail as needed.
Can I add something to this conversation really quick? It's
course.
really interesting because we use test management for our ServiceNow upgrades.
Yeah.
We used Excel spreadsheets for our Epic EMR rollout help button, which is always a struggle. And currently, our Epic teams are using SharePoint for test management. And I know you gave us a demo a while back, but definitely want to look at this again because I can see the value on this right away.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Eddie, because you brought up the test management that's part of ServiceNow. One of the biggest items I hear on test management comes out of the box is, as an analyst, I'm not able to see the steps that occurred before my step. There may have been 50 or 20 steps that happened before. Sometimes I need to see what that information was so then I can then know what to look for when I'm doing my testing. So that's one of the reasons why this is more of like a continuous screen. So as the analyst needed to go through and scroll back and figure out what exactly did registration document, during the registration process, I want to make sure that it's showing in my report correctly when I go through my nightly processing or my charges. Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Well, that was fantastic. And for those who may not have caught one of our earlier episodes, we actually did an entire episode with one of our customers, Methodist Le Bonheur out of Memphis, Tennessee, who implemented this exact solution for their Epic testing process. And there were some really great takeaways and outcomes from that. So definitely log into hop onto our website and grab that previous webinar. A lot of great information there. And then we have one more use case, and then I'd like to leave some room for questions. So the last one we're talking about is change control. Louie, I'd love for you to cover some of the challenges that hospitals and health systems experience when it comes to this for Epic.
Yeah. So if we're talking about Epic specifically, the way change control works, and really what we're going to cover is more of like the data courier and content management. So it's a way that Epic analysts can move records from one environment to the next, whether they're going from POC to test or test to production. And how it relates to change management within ServiceNow is typically you would have to have a change request, whether it's a normal change or standard change, before I'm allowed to move any of that content into the production environment. And with these records within Epic, there's times where I'm moving a single record, and that's pretty straightforward and easy. But there's times where I'm moving, let's say I'm implementing EMR help. There's about 8 different records that are associated with that. And how do I document that in ServiceNow in a way that it can then better evaluate the risk, if there's any high risk or high impact master files or INIs that I'm moving? But then also, how do I get my conflict checker to work? What we see with change control is the Epic analyst may document the application that's going to be impacted, like let's say inpatient or ASAP. They don't go down to the individual record layer. So what we've done here is we've built an integration into Epic where I can pull back the contents of the content manager. And then I can then start to populate the CMDB with all of the master files and the records that are being moved. And it gives me much more insight into what's being moved. So my cab can move a little bit faster. where I can also automatically change the risk value of my change ticket depending on what's being moved. Let me show you a little bit of what this looks like. What you see here on the screen is just the standard change record. This is a normal change. I have it set up for my Epic EMR help, and I have my description, my planning, my schedule, which I have set to go live this Friday. Now, my impacted services is just Epic. What I normally see is it'll say either just Epic or Epic inpatient or something like that. It doesn't really give me any insight into exactly what's being moved. So let me fix that. So I'm going to go to my Epic content management tickets. I'm going to create a new ticket. I want to document my content management ticket ID number here. And I can also choose the environment that I'm pulling this information from. So whether I need to do a change ticket from moving from POC to test, I can do that. Or in this case, I'm going to be moving from the test environment to production. I can do that as well. And I'll go ahead and submit. What ServiceNow is doing in the background is it's calling out to Epic specifically and pulling down, let's get back to the change request. It's pulling down the information of that content management ticket. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom. I see my impacted services. I'm sorry, my affected CIs. I can now see everything that's going to be moved with this content management ticket. So now I have my E2N, my FDIs, my LPPs, E2Us, everything that's being moved, including the actual Epic ID as well. I'm going to click on the FDI record here. Really what this is doing is it's populating your CMDB with 2 additional classes, one for your Epic INIs and then one for the individual records. And from here, I can now document who's the support group or the owner of this specific INI, and does it require additional approval. So now I can change the way the approvals or any additional change tasks that are needed if the interface team needs to review this before it gets approved. Or since this is documented as a high risk item, I can then change the risk evaluation or the risk value on the change ticket to, let's say, high or low, regardless of what the user is typing into your risk assessment piece. So it helps me a little bit more of that risk evaluation and workflow. Let me show you one other piece. I'm going to go back to the change ticket. We talked about conflicts a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and check my conflicts. And I can see that there's already a change. Here's the change number that's moving that E2U, the ED fix toolbar. So now we have 2 different teams that are attempting to move this same record. We never had this type of visibility before without this type of integration or a very tedious manually adding each INI or each record manually, which can just get too tedious and take up too much time.
So Louie, what is at risk if these updates were to get pushed to production without this conflict checker?
Yeah, so it doesn't actually prevent you from moving these changes, but it helps your change manager in some audits. So if I'm moving items and I don't document all of those items within the change ticket, you're at risk of potentially failing one of your change audits. You don't have everything documented appropriately. There have been times when I worked on Epic that these extra records just go along for the ride, or it's pulling dependencies. What I mean by that is if I want to move a specific record in Epic, but it depends on a separate record, I'm going to automatically pull that into the package. May not have initially documented that dependency when I fill out this change request, but now that I have my integration, it can pull those records forward. And then my change ticket will always match my content management packet for audit purposes.
Louie, would you also say that this solution can, increase the health or the value of the CMDB?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Now that we have all of these INIs and we're starting to populate it with records as well, if I wanted to run reports on how often something is being moved and by which team, and I can start to calculate the percentage of success, how many were successful versus unsuccessful, then it allows you to have that conversation with your teams and figure out which master files are considered high risk, which ones are low risk, which ones are a proponent for a standard change, versus which ones have been unsuccessful, all based on the type of records or the master files or records that are being moved.
Eddie, what are your thoughts as you're listening to this?
It's interesting because the one word you mentioned is audit. We don't have the two things tied together. So when we've had some audits and we have to come back and provide reports, we can provide changes on the ServiceNow side, but all this Epic record stuff, they have to go into Epic still. And we've had some conversations with that team to see how we can bring it over, but we may need to expedite those conversations and include this guy, Louie, here, because I think it's going to help us. We need to learn more about this.
Yeah, I love just again, an example of the outcome here around auditing, right? Because auditing obviously is such a critical aspect of managing data in a regulatory healthcare environment. And so we hear a lot of feedback from customers about, how can we improve our ability to respond to audits, to improve our documentation, to provide only what's necessary, but not too much, without having to go and do all of the manual scrubbing to produce that data. So I think that's a huge outcome here that we definitely hear a lot of great feedback about.
Absolutely.
Natalie, I'll go ahead and pick on a question here. So there's a question in the chat. Is there a way to default the risk based on INIs or specific items within an INI? And the answer is yes, absolutely. So what I was showing here is I have my risk level set at the INI level. We can either choose kind of a general checkbox like this, where it's either high risk or if it's defaulted off, it's going to then default to whatever your risk evaluation is within your assessment. But you can change this into more of a drop down where you can choose high, medium, low, or critical. You can do this at the Epic INI level, or here in the Epic records down below, I can do it at the Epic record as well. So if you wanted to adjust your risk at the record level, you can do that as well.
All right.
Very good.
Look, I'm getting text messages. We're going to have to, some other people want to reach out to you, Louie.
Well, this is a great time to transition to Q&A. It sounds like we are getting some questions. And Scott, I know you've been keeping an eye on all the different channels where questions may be coming in. So what questions can this team answer for our audience?
Yeah, we did have a question around just hearing a little bit more about organizational change management. You mentioned it, Eddie, briefly about the importance of the adoption within your team. Just wondering if we could just speak more broadly, or any other experiences that you might have seen at other organizations of how a successful change management, Louie, what does that actually look like? What is needed within that?
Louie, do you want to try to give that one a shot? And I can certainly chime in.
Yeah. I'll let you take the OCM type question.
Yeah, sure. One of the things that, and I'm a huge proponent and very passionate about this topic of organizational change management. And I guess the piece of advice that I would give is it's important to start those conversations early on. As early as when you're even establishing the problem statement or the business case around implementing a solution. And that's one of the biggest things that we see health systems, maybe not put as much attention to, is how do you get those stakeholders, and particularly the leadership of the impacted users, right? How do you get them on board from the beginning so that the conversations and encouraging behavior change can happen not only from the IT team, but also from the leader of those teams that are being impacted and that may need to change a behavior in order to experience the benefits. We could talk all day about organizational change management. It's an area that Optimum does a lot to support our customers, but it is definitely important to have internally within the organization to have that plan, that strategy, and those resources, organized from the beginning of that project to make sure adoption is successful.
That's excellent. Thank you, Natalie. And yeah, I am dropping right now, if anyone's interested, the link to Optimum's ServiceNow site. And it is something that Optimum does very well. So If you are interested in the OCM that Optimum offers, we would love to talk more about that. We have another question here from Estelle, and Estelle says, we use a parent change ticket and create separate change tasks for each application. Is it possible to maintain this strategy?
You can, but I would challenge that a little bit about possibly moving to a model where each team has their own change ticket. The reason for that is each individual may have their own content management package. So the ASAP team versus the inpatient team versus the Willow team, if you're all working on a project together, you may build and keep your build tracker all separate. But it may also change depending on the team that's working on it, who's going to be approving that. So if you have any sort of manager approval, by sharing a change ticket, it's only going to go to one manager's for approval rather than going to the individual teams. So there is some benefit of having them separate because I can implement them at separate times. There's times where the infrastructure team may need to make a change before the inpatient team can do anything. And we want to be able to track those start times and end times appropriately, especially when it comes to planned start and planned end, but also actual start and actual end. So if you wanted to maintain your parent child relationship within change ticket, yes, it would still work. You can add multiple content management tickets. Okay, I see you're coming out for like an upgrade situation. Yeah, I would still say the same thing. Keep your change tickets separate if possible, because they're all going to go live at possibly different times. And then your approvals might be a little bit separated. But either way, you can still use the content management integration if you're going to use one parent change ticket and add multiple content management tickets together.
That's great. Thank you, Louie. And another question from Mark, and he asks, how are new records added to the CMDB? Can they be automated, or could you only track high impact records?
Yeah, it's absolutely automated. So what I would recommend is the initial approach is let's do initial onboarding of all of your master files into ServiceNow. That way you can document whether something's high risk, low risk, support team, anything that we want to document at that level. Would not recommend doing the same thing for the records. The records are just too many records within Epic to pull everything all at once, but it'll populate the CMDB as your users are migrating that content from one environment to the next. So as soon as I click that content management ticket and it pulls in those records, it'll immediately and automatically create those records within the CMDB.
That's great. Thank you, Louie. You're so knowledgeable, yet also so calm. And I think it's kind of unreal. Well, listen, we are out of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining for another great Healthy as Tech episode. You'll be able to find this on the website, on Spotify. Make sure that you sign up. Natalie, Eddie, Louie, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.